Hey guys, tonight we travel far beyond the ticking seconds of your clock. You lie there, maybe in your bed, maybe already half asleep, and the room feels like it's breathing softly. The light from your phone or your laptop flickers against the wall, and for a moment, you forget what year it is. You're about to step into a world where time wasn't something you wore on your wrist, it was something people looked up at the sky to find. Ever wonder how ancient Egyptians knew exactly when the Nile would flood? Or how the Mayans predicted celestial events centuries in advance? It wasn't magic, but an astonishing understanding of time that shaped entire civilizations. You might think counting days is simple, but for millennia, predicting the future, and even surviving, depended on it. Imagine a world without accurate time. That's what our ancestors faced. Yet they built systems of such precision that some still baffle experts today. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And when you're done, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how people all over the world share this same little pocket of the night together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin under an ancient sky. It's quiet. No phones, no watches, no ticking wall clocks. Just you and the stars. The air is dry and warm. Sand shifts beneath your feet. The horizon glows faintly, not from streetlights, but from the Milky Way spilling across the heavens. Out here, time isn't measured by seconds, but how long a shadow stretches, or how high a star climbs before dawn. You notice movement near the river, dark silhouettes tending small fires, the distant shimmer of water reflecting starlight. This is the Nile, the heartbeat of Egypt, long before the pyramids even touched the clouds. People depended on it utterly. The river's floods brought both destruction and salvation. Too much water, and homes washed away. Too little, and the crops starved. So knowing when it would flood wasn't just curiosity, it was survival. Night after night, the Egyptian priests stood watching the sky. They weren't just stargazers, they were mathematicians, meteorologists, and fortune tellers all in one. And every year, just before the flood, one brilliant white star would rise on the eastern horizon, Sopdet, which we now call Sirius, the dog star. The priests noticed a pattern. When Sirius reappeared at dawn, the floods came soon after. That rising became the foundation of the Egyptian calendar, one of the earliest truly solar systems. You imagine yourself standing beside one of those priests, his eyes fixed upward, murmuring to himself as he marks a line in the sand. Maybe he doesn't know why the floods coincide with that star, but he knows they do, and that's enough to turn observation into law. It's strange, isn't it? You think of time as numbers on your phone screen. Yet here, time is a story the sky tells, one patient chapter at a time. The Egyptians divided the year into 12 months of 30 days, adding 5 special festival days at the end. They didn't have weekends, just endless cycles of planting, harvesting, and praying that the heavens stayed predictable. Scholars still argue whether their precise solar year, just 365 days, was luck or genius. Because here's the kicker. The real solar year is about 365 and a quarter days. That tiny fraction eventually made their calendar drift off season until harvest festivals started arriving months too early. You can almost imagine the confusion. Farmers sweating under the wrong stars, temples celebrating New Year's while fields lay barren. To fix it, they didn't. The Egyptians didn't adjust for leap years. Instead, they let their calendars slowly spin out of sync with the actual seasons, like a beautiful broken clock that everyone still agreed to obey. And that's kind of poetic, isn't it? A civilization that built monuments aligned to the sun and yet chose to live by a rhythm slightly out of tune. But then again, maybe that's the point. Maybe perfection was never the goal. The Egyptian world revolved around harmony, not accuracy, a sense that everything, even time, had to breathe. As you drift in that thought, you can almost hear the river whispering below. The wind carries the scent of wet earth and smoke. Somewhere, a temple gong sounds, and shadows of robed figures glide across sandstone walls painted with stars. You see hieroglyphs that record days and moons, tiny strokes capturing centuries. One carving shows Ra, the sun god, sailing his golden boat across the sky. To the Egyptians, that daily journey was time itself. Sunrise to sunset, life to death, rebirth again. They didn't count hours. They watched Ra move, and every temple, every ritual, every breath synchronized with that cosmic schedule. You realize how different it was to live when time wasn't owned by anyone. When nobody could demand, "You're late." The sun set, you stopped. The sun rose, you began again. It was a world that ran on patience, not panic. And maybe, as your eyelids grow heavy, you feel a little jealous of them. Out there, under that endless Egyptian sky, you're part of something vast, a rhythm that existed before clocks, before deadlines. The stars shimmer a little brighter, and the night hums with quiet purpose. The ancient world isn't asleep. It's waiting for the next moment to begin.
You wander deeper into the desert's edge, where dawn begins to smudge the horizon in soft gold. The Nile gleams in the distance like a slow-moving mirror, and you realize the entire landscape, every hut, every palm, every temple, is built around its rhythm. The people here don't ask, "What time is it?" They ask, "What does the river say?" The early morning air hums with quiet motion. Farmers lift woven baskets filled with barley seeds. Children chase after goats, and the priests begin their day in silence. But among them, time is sacred, not just for agriculture, but for the gods themselves. In a nearby temple courtyard, a priest bends over a smooth slab of limestone etched with lines. He places a stick upright and waits for the sun. You watch, curious. The shadow creeps along the lines, marking the day's progress. This simple tool, a shadow clock, is one of humanity's earliest attempts to trap time. Each inch of shadow was a fraction of the day, measured not by ticking, but by sunlight slipping quietly across stone. Imagine living in such rhythm, your hours literally sliding away before your eyes, graceful and unhurried. Noon was when shadows disappeared, and you could almost feel the world pause to catch its breath. But Egyptians didn't stop there. They even measured night. When the sun fell and shadows vanished, they turned to the sky again. The priests memorized sequences of decans, groups of stars rising in order throughout the night. By tracking which decan appeared at which hour, they built a celestial clock no one could wind down. Scholars still argue whether those decans were used for pure astronomy or for mystical ritual. Maybe both. To the Egyptians, the boundary between science and spirituality was as thin as the line between day and night. And then there was the Nilometer. You picture a stone staircase descending into the river, each step carefully marked. During flood season, priests would watch the water rise. The higher it climbed, the more taxes the pharaoh could demand, because, of course, a good flood meant a good harvest. You smile to yourself. Even 5,000 years ago, bureaucracy found a way to monetize the weather. It's funny to think that predicting floods wasn't just divine insight, it was good accounting. Those same calendars that told farmers when to plant also told officials when to collect. And in that blend of the sacred and the practical, you begin to see how civilization itself ticks, not just by stars or shadows, but by human ambition. Still, there's something hauntingly peaceful about it. You close your eyes and listen. The faint lapping of water, the whisper of papyrus reeds, the soft murmur of people speaking a language long lost to the wind. You imagine what it must have been like to live without knowing your exact age. Egyptians didn't celebrate birthdays like we do. Years were counted by the reigns of kings, in the third year of Pharaoh Amenemhat, as if time itself reset with every ruler. You weren't 30 or 40, you were simply alive during the 21st year of someone else's power. There's a strange humility in that, and a subtle danger. Because if a pharaoh's time could define yours, then who really owned your days? You glance toward a massive temple, its pillars carved with astronomical scenes. The ceiling is painted deep blue, dotted with golden stars. And in the center, the goddess Nut arches over the world, her body forming the sky. Every night she swallows the sun. Every dawn she gives birth to it again. Time in her hands is eternal renewal, a story without end. And as you walk beneath her painted body, you can almost feel it. The comfort of a world where death isn't an ending, just another sunrise. The Egyptian calendar reflected that same belief. Their festivals followed cosmic cycles, mirroring the gods' rhythms. Each celebration of sowing, of harvest, of rebirth marked a moment when heaven and earth aligned in perfect harmony. You think of how different it feels today, when time slices your life into rigid boxes, hours, minutes, seconds, all screaming at you to hurry. Back then, the world was slower, but also infinite. They weren't racing against the clock, they were dancing with it. At the edge of the temple, an old man approaches, perhaps a scribe. His hands are stained with ink, his eyes sharp as obsidian. He smiles faintly, as if he's seen you before. In his hand, he holds a roll of papyrus, and on it rows of neat, black marks. Dates, days, months, the steady heartbeat of empire. Without these, no festival would begin, no taxes collected, no prayers timed. He unrolls the sheet before you and taps gently. "We do not count days," he might have said. "We keep them." You run your fingers across the symbols, and it feels human. Not numbers, not math, but hope, order, a way to tame chaos. The sun climbs higher, the temple walls burn gold. Somewhere in the distance you hear a conch horn, a signal maybe, or a ritual beginning. You know this moment won't last. Soon other civilizations will take the torch of time, carry it further, twist it differently. But for now, under this Egyptian light, you simply exist between two eternities, the flood that was and the flood that will be. And for one quiet breath, you understand what they did. They didn't just invent calendars. They found a way to make the universe keep them company.
You move away from the river now, leaving behind the whispers of the Nile and the golden glow of dawn. The sand cools beneath your feet as you cross into the shade of ancient stone. Towering obelisks cast long, thin shadows, and for a fleeting second you wonder, how many mornings like this have passed unnoticed, counted silently by the shifting light? You find yourself inside a temple courtyard carved with astronomical precision. Everything around you, from the columns to the corridors, seems built not only for worship, but for measurement. You realize the Egyptians didn't just build for gods, they built for time itself. A priest stands near a wall etched with hieroglyphs and star charts. He looks up as a shaft of sunlight slices through a small opening in the roof, landing perfectly on a symbol, a scarab maybe, or the sun disk of Ra. You watch the priest nod quietly, marking the moment. This single beam, falling exactly where it should, announces the beginning of a new season. You stepped into a world where architecture is astronomy, where temples are calendars made of stone. These massive complexes, like the Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, weren't just monuments, they were clocks. The alignment of corridors, the direction of their gates, even the placement of altars, all followed the celestial blueprint. When sunlight pierced certain chambers during solstices, the people celebrated renewal. Scholars still argue whether those alignments were symbolic or functional. Maybe both. Perhaps priests wanted to remind everyone that the gods themselves kept time, or perhaps they were simply recording the heavens with terrifying accuracy. Either way, standing there, you feel like the universe and this temple are breathing in sync. And in that stillness, you start to sense something ancient stir. Not magic, but math disguised as divinity. You wander through the hypostyle hall, the air heavy with incense and dust. Sunlight filters through cracks, drawing lines across the floor like invisible rulers. Every shadow here tells a story. The Egyptians didn't just read the sky, they read their own walls. You trace one faint groove that runs along the floor and realize it's aligned perfectly to true north. You smile. The first compasses were shadows, long before magnets. As you pass deeper inside, torches flicker on the walls, revealing carvings of stars, crescents, and tiny boats, each one carrying Ra across the night sky. The air feels timeless. You realize that for the Egyptians, the temple wasn't only a place to pray, but a place to measure eternity. There's a kind of awe in that, isn't there? You live in an age of satellites, atomic clocks, and GPS, yet even now, aligning a building perfectly to the sun or the stars would take a surveyor's equipment. These people did it with little more than rope, sight, and patience. It makes you wonder how much of our modern precision really feels, well, human. You step outside again. The sun has climbed higher, turning the sand into liquid gold. The Nile glitters in the distance, and the wind carries with it the low hum of a civilization moving through its daily rhythm. Boats cutting across the river, scribes recording harvest tallies, artisans chiseling stone to mark another rain. And through all of it, one idea binds them together. Time is divine order. Without calendars, no one knows when to honor the gods. Without the rising of Sirius, no one knows when life will return to the fields. Time isn't just useful, it's sacred. You think about how the Egyptians might have experienced a year, not as something slipping away, but as a cycle returning again. Their word for year was renpet, a symbol shaped like a palm shoot, a sign of growth, renewal, rebirth. That alone says everything. Time was not linear, it was alive. And maybe, you think, that's the key difference between their world and ours. To them, time didn't take things away, it gave them back, in cycles, in floods, in sunrise after sunset. The thought lingers as you rest against a column, your fingers brushing the cool surface. You can almost hear the whisper of a scribe somewhere nearby, reciting months under his breath. Thoth, Paofi, Hathor, Koyak, names like ancient music. You can't help but notice how each month was tied not to numbers, but to the gods. Time wasn't an empty vessel, it was filled with personality. A young apprentice passes, balancing a clay pot of blue pigment. He's painting the ceiling, tracing the outlines of constellations. The temple roof above him becomes the sky itself, filled with stars, planets, and mysterious figures. His brush trembles slightly as he outlines a bright star cluster. He doesn't know it, but he's preserving astronomical data that modern scientists will one day rediscover in museums. You smile faintly. Maybe timekeeping isn't just about the passing of days. Maybe it's humanity's way of saying, we were here. The wind picks up again, carrying fine dust through the open doorway. You squint towards the desert horizon, and for a moment, the image shifts. The scene blurs into twilight. The stars return, and with them, that quiet hum of eternal rhythm. You realize the Egyptians didn't separate night from day, death from life, heaven from earth. To them, all these things blended, a seamless continuum of time and being. The stars overhead were ancestors watching, and their steady motion across the sky reminded everyone that life continued long after the body rested. And as the night deepens around you once more, the temple feels alive, pulsing with that same cosmic breath. You close your eyes, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice whispers the truth that has outlived empires. Time is not what you own, it's what you join.
You find yourself walking away from the temple now, barefoot through the cooling sand, toward a cluster of smaller stone monuments half buried by time. The air grows still, the kind of stillness that seems to stretch between worlds. Not silence, but something deeper. It feels like standing between seconds, caught in the soft pause of eternity. Ahead, you see what looks like a broken pillar surrounded by scattered stones, but as you draw closer, you realize it's deliberate. An ancient sun circle, the Egyptian version of a clock face. It's simple, elegant, a central stone marker and surrounding points where shadows once touched at specific times of day. You crouch beside it, running your fingers along the warm surface. You can almost feel the thousands of days that have passed over it, every sunrise laying its golden finger exactly where you now sit. It's humbling, the idea that humans were already measuring their place in the universe long before they measured their steps. A gentle wind stirs. You can hear distant laughter, maybe from farmers or workers resting after a long morning. In their voices, there's no rush, no obsession with productivity. The day moves the way a river flows, steady, unhurried, certain of where it's going. You watch as a shadow slowly shifts across the stone. It's so subtle you'd miss it if you blinked. Yet that movement, that quiet, invisible slide, is time itself. It's strange how powerful something so slow can feel. As you rise, the horizon shimmers. Beyond the dunes, something catches your eye. A tall, thin shape cutting into the sky. An obelisk. You've seen pictures of them. Maybe even visited one standing proudly in a modern city square. But here, in its original setting, it feels different. Not decorative. Sacred. The obelisk gleams under the afternoon sun, its tip polished to a mirror shine. You realize its shadow falls across a paved courtyard, etched with precise markings. This isn't coincidence. It's a design, a solar instrument grand enough to measure the heavens. The obelisk's shadow, moving inch by inch, once told priests the hours, the solstices, even the start of the agricultural year. Scholars still argue whether obelisks served purely religious functions or acted as public timekeepers. Either way, they were the first skyscrapers built for the sun, designed to touch the divine. You imagine standing here thousands of years ago, watching as the shadow reached its mark on the longest day of the year. Trumpets might sound, priests chanting as incense rises. A moment not just of astronomy, but of meaning, proof that the gods and humans shared one rhythm. You close your eyes, feeling the heat on your skin. Time feels slower here, almost viscous, like honey pouring from the sky. You breathe deeply, realizing how much our modern lives have forgotten this sensation, to feel time rather than chase it. Somewhere nearby, a low voice murmurs. You turn to see a scribe sitting in the shade, tracing numbers onto a clay tablet. He's not writing stories or prayers. He's tracking shadow lengths, distances, the angle of the sun. He's keeping what you might call data. But to him, it's divine arithmetic, a way to speak to the gods through precision. You think about your own timekeeping devices, your phone glowing on a nightstand, your laptop clock syncing automatically with satellites orbiting thousands of miles above Earth. You never question them. You trust them completely. But this man, this ancient astronomer, earns time the hard way. He measures it, checks it, doubts it, reveres it. And maybe that's why his version feels so alive.
The scribe glances at you briefly, as if aware of your presence across centuries. Then, without a word, he presses a small seal into the clay. A circle with a tiny star in its center. His mark of completion. A symbol that means, I've seen time today. The sun dips lower now. The desert takes on a burnt orange hue. Shadows lengthen and soften, stretching like sleepy arms across the ground. The obelisk's shadow touches one final mark, a line cut deep into stone. You watch it settle perfectly into place, a moment designed thousands of years ago, still accurate now. The world holds its breath. This was how they knew the solstice had arrived, the longest day, when the sun paused in its yearly climb. They called it the standing still of the sun, a brief moment of cosmic balance before the tilt of the world shifted again. You realize you're standing at the intersection of science, faith, and patience. These people weren't guessing. They were watching, waiting, recording. They saw patterns in chaos, and by naming them, they made the universe less terrifying. You smile faintly. Isn't that what all humans do, in their own way? We give structure to mystery, not to cage it, but to live with it. The first cool breeze of evening brushes past. Somewhere, someone lights a torch. You hear the faint sound of reeds rustling by the Nile again, and the day sighs into twilight. You stand quietly beside the obelisk as its shadow fades into the growing dusk, and you can't help but feel connected to the priest who watched this same moment thousands of years ago, to every person who's ever looked up and wondered what the sky was trying to say. For the first time, you don't just understand how ancient Egyptians measured time. You feel it. Slow, breathing, eternal.
You can almost feel the grit of the desert wind brushing against your face now. The hum of the Nile echoes faintly, as if time itself is breathing beside you. You find yourself in the midst of the ancient Egyptian world, where every sunrise wasn't just another morning, it was a divine event, a symbol of cosmic order. You watch farmers by the river, their eyes fixed on the horizon. They aren't waiting for the sun, they're watching the water, the Nile. It is both life and death, the bringer of crops and catastrophe. Predicting when it would flood wasn't a convenience, it was survival. And somehow they did it, year after year, century after century, with staggering accuracy. They didn't have clocks, telescopes, or algorithms. What they had were the stars, particularly one, Sirius, the brightest in the night sky. Every year, just before the Nile began to rise, Sirius would reappear in the dawn sky after months of absence. This wasn't coincidence to them, it was divine coordination, a heavenly alarm clock set by the gods themselves. You glance upward. There it is, Sirius, twinkling above the desert sands. You imagine priests at Thebes or Heliopolis carefully noting its position. To them, the appearance of Sirius wasn't just astronomy, it was prophecy. It meant the goddess Isis had returned to bless the Nile, to fill it with life once more. The Egyptian calendar was born from this celestial rhythm. They divided their year into 3 seasons: Akhet, the flooding; Peret, the growing; and Shemu, the harvest. Each had 4 months, 30 days each, plus 5 mysterious epigomenal days at the end. 5 bonus days when the gods themselves were said to walk among mortals, the birthdays of Osiris, Horus, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. You smile faintly. Leave it to the Egyptians to literally schedule divine birthdays. You begin to notice how precise it all was. Their year, 365 days, was almost exactly correct, only missing by a fraction. But over centuries, that tiny difference made their calendar drift away from the actual flood cycle. Scholars still argue whether the Egyptians truly understood the need for a leap day or if they simply accepted time as something imperfect but divine. Maybe both. Then there's the odd detail that feels almost eerie. Egyptian farmers and priests used calendars entirely different. One practical, one religious. One measured grain and labor, the other worship and eternity. To them, this wasn't confusion, it was balance. The earthly and the celestial coexisted just like the land and the river, the flood and the drought. You picture the temple corridors filled with hieroglyphs. Some scholars think those walls weren't just decoration, but encoded calendars, mathematical and astronomical patterns carved into eternity. And while we now rely on apps to remind us of the date, these people aligned entire temples to catch the exact beam of sunlight on a single sacred day each year. The great temple of Abu Simbel, for instance, was designed so that twice a year sunlight would travel through its dark corridors to illuminate statues of gods deep within. Except one, Ptah, god of the underworld, remained forever in shadow. You can almost hear the murmur of priests as dawnlight floods in, touching stone faces that hadn't seen the sun in months. Imagine waiting all year just for that perfect moment of light and getting it right every single time. You exhale slowly. The desert is still. The river murmurs softly nearby. And as you drift between their world and yours, you realize something. They weren't obsessed with time the way we are. They didn't count minutes, they measured meaning. You hear the rustle of papyrus scrolls, the scratch of a reed pen, someone recording the passage of days. Maybe they too felt the same quiet awe you do now, the awareness that even the simplest sunrise is a cosmic event. You stretch slightly, letting the imagery settle around you like warm sand. The Egyptians didn't just mark time, they danced with it. And as the stars wheel overhead, you can't help but wonder. Maybe we've been running from time ever since they stopped worshiping it.
You leave the golden sands and winding waters of Egypt behind and find yourself transported east toward the bustling courtyards of Babylon. The air smells different here, spiced with incense and clay, mingled with the faint tang of livestock in crowded markets. You walk among towering ziggurats, massive staircases ascending into the sky, as if reaching for the heavens themselves. Here, time is still alive, but it's counted differently. Babylonian astronomers gather under the wide blue sky, squinting at the sun and moon. Clay tablets lie before them, filled with tiny symbols, numbers etched meticulously into wet clay, waiting to be baked and preserved for eternity. Every mark is a careful observation, the phases of the moon, the motion of planets, the alignment of stars. The Babylonians didn't just want to know what happened, they wanted to know when. Every festival, every ritual, every agricultural task depended on precision. Scholars still argue whether they were first motivated by religious devotion or sheer necessity, but it hardly matters. You can see the math and magic intertwined, inseparable. Their base 60 system, which survives today in the 60 minutes of an hour and 360 degrees of a circle, allowed them to calculate with astonishing accuracy. You bend down, tracing the marks on a tablet with your fingertip. Each number feels alive, vibrating with human curiosity. You can almost hear the faint scratching of reed pens against clay, the low chants of priests invoking the gods' favor. Oddly enough, they didn't just care about the moon or sun, they cared about omens. A solar eclipse could make a king tremble in his palace. The wrong planetary alignment might call for immediate sacrifices. You watch as an astronomer lifts his gaze skyward, then makes a calculation, muttering something about Venus's rising. That tiny movement across the heavens dictated the lives of thousands. And here's the quirky part. The Babylonians had a 19-year cycle, similar to our modern metonic cycle, to reconcile lunar months with the solar year. You chuckle softly. Imagine living every day aware that the calendar itself is trying to catch up with the cosmos, like a student perpetually running after a train that never stops. In the temple's courtyard, priests align shadow rods with the sun, building rudimentary sundials. Unlike the Egyptians, these shadows are just part of a bigger picture, a combination of lunar cycles, planetary motions, and predictive algorithms that you'd recognize today as surprisingly advanced. It feels like someone whispered, "Math is sacred here." You step closer to a tablet detailing the New Year festival, Akitu, where the king would reenact creation myths and reaffirm divine order. Time here is ceremonial, not just functional. Days are measured not only by celestial movements, but by societal rituals, each step designed to ensure harmony between humans and gods. The odd details keep piling up. Babylonians calculated the year with remarkable precision, but still included symbolic errors to appease deities, a deliberate blend of science and superstition. Scholars still debate whether this was a clever compromise or genuine belief. You smile quietly. Humanity has always been this way, striving for precision while respecting mystery. You wander toward the ziggurat steps, feeling the coarse brick beneath your fingers. Looking down over the city, you can see the streets arranged in careful, almost mathematical grids. Time and space intertwine here. The rhythm of life is set by astronomical cycles and human planning alike. As evening falls, the sky blooms with stars. You notice constellations like Orion and Pleiades, the same ones the Babylonians charted centuries before. You wonder how many generations leaned over clay tablets under this very sky, whispering calculations to themselves, imagining the movements of planets and plotting rituals that would shape entire empires. You lean back, resting on the warm stone, letting the weight of their ingenuity settle around you. Babylonian timekeeping wasn't just about calendars or festivals. It was about understanding the cosmos and knowing humanity's place within it. It's subtle, almost meditative, and you can feel your heartbeat slowing in response. In the quiet of the desert night, you hear the faint echoes of clay tools tapping, chants resonating from temple halls, and the wind carrying secrets of time long measured, yet still alive. And you realize, even now, sitting thousands of years later, you're participating in that ancient dialogue, watching, learning, and marveling at the rhythm of civilizations that dared to tame the sky. The evening air cools as you wander through Babylon's twisting streets, the sandstone and mud brick walls glowing faintly under a rising moon. Lamps flicker along alleys, casting elongated shadows that seem to dance in rhythm with your footsteps. You feel as if the city itself is breathing in measured pulses, a slow heartbeat counting the passing night. Here, the magic of numbers meets everyday life. You pass merchants stacking grain and barley, their ledgers marked with strange symbols. Every grain, every coin, every measure is tied to time. The Babylonians weren't just astronomers. They were mathematicians, accountants, and visionaries rolled into one. You glance at a tablet lying near a street corner. Tiny squares etched with numbers, tracking lunar months and agricultural cycles. It's meticulous work, every day accounted for, every season anticipated. One of the most astonishing things strikes you as you watch the temple priests. They didn't merely observe celestial bodies, they predicted them. Eclipses, planetary positions, lunar phases, all carefully logged, calculated, and interpreted. It's mind-bending to think that some of these predictions were accurate centuries before telescopes even existed. Scholars still argue whether the Babylonians used purely observational techniques or had developed an early form of predictive mathematics, but the results were undeniable. Oddly, there's a human touch in the precision. A scribe pauses, dips his stylus into clay, and presses a mark that isn't quite perfect. You notice it immediately. Imperfection among perfection. Perhaps a mistake, or perhaps a symbolic gesture to remind the gods that humans are fallible, even while attempting to decode the heavens. You continue toward a massive ziggurat, its base broad, the steps climbing like a ladder to the sky. Each step aligns carefully with the solar and lunar positions, creating a monumental calendar in 3 dimensions. As the sun dips behind the horizon, the shadows fall into patterns known only to the initiated. You feel a chill of awe. Every step is a measure of time, every shadow a fleeting moment captured in stone. The odd and almost humorous detail emerges as you notice the scribes juggling both practicality and superstition. For instance, they used the base 60 system, a number system inherited by modern mathematics, not merely to calculate celestial events, but to structure daily life. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle, all surviving echoes of their obsession with balance and harmony. You smirk quietly, imagining their conversations. If the moon doesn't align, we'll be cursed, but at least the fraction is elegant. Time in Babylon was never neutral. It had consequences. A miscalculated lunar month could alter festivals, disrupt planting schedules, or invite divine wrath. Priests and astronomers held a subtle but immense power. Through meticulous observations, they dictated not only the rhythm of the cosmos, but the rhythm of civilization itself. As night deepens, the city seems to pause. Stars pierce the darkness, constellations gleaming like polished jewels. You trace Orion and the Pleiades, the same formations that guided sailors, farmers, and kings thousands of years ago. You feel the weight of history in those star patterns, connecting Babylon to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. In the distance, a young apprentice rolls out a clay tablet, marking the day's lunar phase. You watch him write with reverent care, aware that these small acts would ripple through centuries. The precision of their work, combined with human fallibility, gives time a texture you've never felt before. Simultaneously scientific and intimate. You settle on the steps of the ziggurat, letting the soft breeze brush against your skin. The Babylonians were not simply counting hours and days. They were deciphering the universe, threading human existence into the fabric of the cosmos, and leaving behind an inheritance that humankind would still rely on millennia later. For a moment, you close your eyes. You are the observer and the observed, moving through cycles both vast and intimate. You realize that time isn't only about survival or measurement, it's about connection between stars, humans, gods, and history. And as the night hums around you, you understand that even the smallest mark on a clay tablet carries the weight of eternity. You rise from the ziggurat steps and wander toward the bustling heart of Babylon, where marketplaces hum with life even as night descends. The scent of baked bread, spices, and river mud mingles in the air. Traders count their coins, scribes tally goods, and children chase one another, laughing, unaware of the precise astronomical calculations guiding the rhythm of their lives. Every action here is quietly tethered to time. Festivals, taxes, harvests, none proceed without careful planning. You notice a scholar huddled under a lamp, hunched over a tablet, fingers smudged with clay dust. Tiny wedges and symbols chart lunar cycles, planetary movements, and even eclipses. This is not idle work. These records could predict moments of triumph or disaster for kings and citizens alike.
The Babylonians' fascination with numbers is almost playful. They developed a base 60 system that seems quirky to us now, yet it shaped everything, from geometry to the 360-degree circle down to our modern clocks. You imagine their discussions. Let's divide the heavens by 60. It just feels right. That combination of whimsy and rigor hums through the air, and you can almost hear the scribes chuckling at their own cleverness. Yet the system wasn't purely for intellectual satisfaction. Eclipses, for instance, were ominous signs. One miscalculated shadow could terrify kings and alter political decisions. Scholars still debate whether Babylonians interpreted these celestial events as warnings or guidelines, but the precision of their observations was undeniable. You feel the weight of it, the quiet power in predicting the heavens. Oddly, amid all this calculation, there's ritual and superstition intertwined. Priests and astronomers alike left small symbolic errors in their tablets, perhaps an offering to the gods or a humble acknowledgement of human fallibility. You smile. Even in civilization's pursuit of perfection, there is always room for imperfection. The marketplace fades behind you as you approach a temple dedicated to Marduk. Its towering columns are etched with cuneiform that records astronomical observations. Every step, every shadow, every sunbeam has been calculated to correspond with the calendar and sacred rituals. You feel a subtle thrill. The architecture itself is alive, ticking in sync with the cosmos. You pause to watch a young apprentice aligning a small clay rod with the sun's shadow. Each day, each hour, a precise calculation. Each calculation a link to the divine. This rhythm governs not only celestial events, but also agricultural cycles. Barley is planted or harvested according to these observations, festivals are scheduled, and the king's decrees follow cosmic alignment. Scholars still argue whether the Babylonians prioritized science or religion in their timekeeping, but the beauty lies in the combination. Logic and ritual coexist seamlessly. Numbers become prophecy, calendars become sacred instruments, and life itself moves in a delicate balance between observation and devotion. As night settles fully, the sky glows with stars. You trace Orion, Pleiades, and Taurus, the same constellations charted on clay tablets centuries ago. The movement of these celestial bodies dictates not only rituals and harvests, but the very heartbeat of Babylonian life. Standing beneath them, you feel small and infinite all at once. You finally lean against the warm stone of the temple courtyard, letting the hum of the city and the whispers of history wash over you. Babylonians weren't merely measuring time. They were weaving human existence into the cosmos, threading observation, ritual, and intuition into a tapestry that stretched across generations. And in that quiet moment, you realize something profound. Even though centuries separate you from these ancient astronomers, their work resonates now as vividly as it did then. Time, they understood, was not simply hours or days. It was life, culture, and continuity, all measured beneath the same eternal sky you now gaze upon. You step away from the city temples and ziggurats, letting the Babylonians' hum of life fade into a soft memory as you move northward, toward the plains of ancient Mesopotamia, where another chapter of timekeeping awaits. The air feels cooler here, carrying the earthy scent of freshly tilled fields, the soft murmur of irrigation canals, and the distant bray of donkeys. In this region, farmers and scholars alike share a single obsession: predictability. Every planted seed, every harvest, every festival depends on a cycle that must be understood, observed, and respected. You notice them marking river levels and moon phases on clay tablets, recording subtle variations with patient care. Each measurement, each observation is a testament to humanity's desire to impose order on nature's chaos. Here, time is no longer just celestial. It is agricultural, social, and divine all at once. Months are organized by the moon, years by both lunar and solar cycles, and festivals tied directly to the movements of stars and planets. You trace the symbols etched into a clay tablet, each wedge and line representing both a day and a story, a calculation and a prayer. Oddly, despite the meticulousness, there's whimsy hidden in the math. Babylonian scribes often included mnemonic devices, poetic phrases, and even small jokes alongside numerical data. Scholars still debate whether these were mere memory aids or subtle expressions of personality within an otherwise rigid system. Either way, they humanize the numbers, turning clay into a canvas where intellect and emotion coexist. You walk along a narrow canal, noticing farmers adjusting dikes and sluices according to lunar phases. Timing irrigation with the moon's position is believed to maximize crop yield, a practical ritual blending astronomy and agriculture. You can almost feel the subtle connection between celestial bodies and earthly life, a rhythm as old as civilization itself. In the distance, you see a small observatory perched atop a mud brick platform. Priests and scholars lean over clay tablets, calculating eclipses and planetary alignments. Their meticulous records allow kings to anticipate events months, sometimes years in advance. One miscalculation could lead to famine, unrest, or the displeasure of the gods. The responsibility is immense, yet their precision is extraordinary. And here's an oddly charming detail. Mesopotamians sometimes used animal movements as time indicators, noting the behavior of birds or the rise of specific fish in the river. It seems almost quaint now, but for them, it was a practical supplement to their astronomical observations. Nature itself became part of the calendar. You sit on the edge of a canal, watching the moon's reflection ripple across water, and you realize the profound duality in their approach. Science and superstition, logic and ritual, practicality and devotion, all merge into a seamless system. Time is not abstract, it is living, breathing, observable. Scholars still argue whether these early systems influenced later civilizations directly or evolved independently. But as you trace the stars overhead, you can see the continuity. Humanity everywhere seeks the same thing: predictability, understanding, and the comfort of order amid chaos. The stars begin to shimmer brighter, and the wind carries soft whispers of the past. Scribes recording lunar months, farmers consulting the sky, priests aligning rituals with cosmic cycles. You feel yourself enveloped in this rhythm, your heartbeat syncing, if only for a moment, with the eternal cycles of human observation. And as the night stretches infinitely above you, you understand that time in Mesopotamia wasn't just measured, it was experienced, lived, and celebrated, a living thread connecting humanity to the cosmos.
You leave the calm canals of Mesopotamia behind, stepping into the rolling hills and dense forests of ancient Europe, where another approach to time emerges, one rooted in stone, wood, and shadow. The air is cooler here, scented with pine and damp earth, and every rustle of leaves seems to carry a message about the passing seasons. You wander into a clearing, where towering stones rise from the soil like silent sentinels. Stonehenge stretches before you, its massive trilithons arranged with deliberate precision. Sunlight falls through gaps, casting long, angled shadows that align perfectly with solstices. It's astonishing. Thousands of years later, you can still see the exact moments the builders intended. You run your hand along the cold surface of a stone, feeling the ridges and grooves left by ancient hands. This isn't just architecture, it's astronomy frozen in rock. Every upright, every lintel, every carefully carved notch was a tool for marking time. The rising and setting of the sun, the lunar cycle, and even the occasional eclipse. Scholars still argue about the exact purpose of Stonehenge.
Was it purely ceremonial? A temple? A calendar? Perhaps a burial site? Maybe all of the above. Standing here, you sense that precision and mystery coexist perfectly, just as they did for the Egyptians and Babylonians. Oddly, the builders had no written records, no clay tablets or papyrus scrolls. Yet their understanding of solar and lunar cycles rivals anything the ancient Near East achieved. You marvel at the human capacity to observe, calculate, and construct with only intuition, patience, and communal effort. You notice the ground is marked by circular patterns of smaller stones, and you imagine druidic rituals, seasonal festivals, and ceremonies tied to harvests and solstices. The calendar here is not numbers on a tablet, but movement and observation, shadows sliding across stone, sunbeams striking altars, the length of your own shadow telling the story of the year. In this forested landscape, timekeeping is tactile, intuitive, and communal. You can see entire villages using the same markers, the same rhythms to align their daily lives. Planting, harvesting, hunting, everything revolves around the predictable yet subtle cycles of nature. And then there's the quirky detail. Some stones may have been deliberately placed to mark lunar standstills, complex cycles that take nearly 18 years to measure. Imagine planning something that takes 18 years to measure. Patience on a scale almost unimaginable today. You can't help but smile at their foresight and commitment. As dusk falls, you sit between two monoliths, letting the warm stone absorb the last rays of sun. A gentle breeze stirs the surrounding grass, carrying the distant murmur of the forest. You imagine generations of humans standing here before you, watching the same sky, measuring the same shadows, feeling the same awe. Scholars still debate how the builders calculated angles so precisely without modern tools, but as you lean back and watch the horizon darken, you realize it may not have mattered. Time here is measured not by instruments, but by experience, observation, and reverence. And in this quiet, stone-filled clearing, you feel a profound connection to the people who came before, to the earth itself, and to the sky overhead. Their calendar, etched in stone and shadow, reminds you that time is not only measured, but felt, witnessed, and honored in ways that transcend numbers. The forest around Stonehenge fades into twilight as you wander further into ancient Celtic lands, where time is interwoven with myth, ritual, and the rhythm of nature. The air is crisp, scented with wet moss and blooming heather, and the ground beneath your feet is soft and springy, alive with the hum of unseen insects. Here, the calendar is not carved in stone or etched on clay. It is oral, seasonal, and communal. Druids and villagers measure time by the cycles of the moon, the solstices, and the equinoxes. You watch a small gathering near a standing stone circle, where a druid chants softly, marking the turning of the season. Every word, every gesture aligns with nature's flow, creating a living calendar that pulses with life itself. Oddly, even without written records, their precision is striking. They track the lunar months, noting phases that dictate when to plant, harvest, or celebrate. Festivals like Beltane and Samhain are tied to solar events, connecting agricultural needs with spiritual observation. Scholars still debate how accurately these cycles were observed, but as you watch, you feel the rhythm of their timing in the sway of trees and flicker of firelight. You follow a child as she skips along a stream, counting stones aloud in rhythm with the flowing water. Perhaps unintentionally, she mirrors the moon's orbit, a small reminder that learning and observation happen naturally in these ancient societies. Their calendars are as much a part of daily life as the food they eat or the songs they sing. You notice the druid raising a staff toward the sky, aligning it with a distant hilltop where the sun will rise. The act is ceremonial, yet functional, an observatory in human form. Shadows stretch across the ground, marking the hours, the days, the turning of the year. You realize that in these lands, time is not just measured, it is enacted. There's a quirky yet fascinating detail. Some festivals intentionally misalign with the solar or lunar cycle, creating symbolic errors to honor deities or ancestors. I smile at the idea. Deliberate imperfection, a human touch woven into the cosmos. Scholars still argue whether these deviations were religiously motivated or served practical purposes, but the effect is poetic. The forest grows darker, stars slowly appearing through gaps in the canopy. You trace constellations, some familiar, some alien to modern eyes. To the Celts, these stars were guides, calendars, and mythic symbols all at once. Each constellation carried a story, and each story mapped the movement of time across the heavens. A soft wind rustles the leaves, and you hear distant laughter and the clatter of a wooden drum. The people here live within cycles, planting and harvesting, celebrating and mourning, all synchronized to the universe. Their calendar is experiential, filled with ritual, observation, and communal participation. You find yourself sitting near a small stone altar, letting the quiet of the woods envelop you. The Celts understood time not as something to dominate, but as something to honor. Shadow and sun, earth and sky, work and rest. Everything forms a pulse, a rhythm you can feel beneath your feet. As night deepens, you lean back and take a deep breath, feeling the continuity between stone, sky, and human endeavor. Time here is not abstract or numerical. It's living, breathing, and shared, a tapestry woven from observation, reverence, and daily life. And in that understanding, you sense a profound simplicity and wisdom that stretches across centuries, connecting you to every ancient eye that once gazed skyward.
The dense Celtic forests fade behind you as you journey southward toward the vast plains of ancient China, where timekeeping takes on a more mechanical and scholarly character. The air here carries the scent of bamboo, wet soil, and incense drifting from small temples. You notice the distant glimmer of a water wheel turning slowly in a river, the rhythm of its rotation marking a human attempt to capture and measure time. You enter a courtyard where scholars and astronomers gather, their attention fixed on tall observatories and armillary spheres, intricate bronze instruments designed to map the heavens. They bend over their calculations with quiet reverence, recording the motion of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing accuracy. You realize that in ancient China, time is both cosmic and civic, linking celestial observation directly to governance, agriculture, and ritual. Oddly, some of their methods feel almost playful. Scholars would use shadow casting devices, such as gnomons, to track the sun's passage, carefully recording angles and distances. Yet, alongside these precise instruments, they sometimes relied on omens or natural phenomena, the flight of birds, the blooming of flowers, as gentle guides. Scholars still argue whether these omens were superstitions or a sophisticated way to cross-check astronomical data. Either way, it adds a fascinating human layer to precision. You wander past a scholar sketching lunar phases on a bamboo scroll. The markings are intricate, almost musical in their rhythm. Lunar months are carefully tracked, allowing the Chinese to predict eclipses, seasonal changes, and agricultural cycles
with remarkable consistency. They even develop a sexagenary cycle, a repeating 60-year system combining heavenly stems and earthly branches, which would influence calendars for millennia. You notice an amusing yet enlightening detail. Officials sometimes added intercalary months to reconcile lunar months with the solar year. Imagine planning festivals and harvests based on months that might or might not exist. It's a clever solution, blending observation, mathematics, and practical necessity, a hallmark of Chinese ingenuity. The sun dips low behind distant mountains, casting long shadows across courtyards and pagodas. You watch as a young apprentice carefully aligns a shadow rod, noting the moment the sun passes a critical angle. Every movement, every measurement links human life to celestial rhythm. Festivals, imperial edicts, and agricultural decisions all hinge on these observations. Scholars still debate how much influence astrology had over early Chinese calendars, but the accuracy of their observations is undeniable. Even centuries before mechanical clocks, these calendars allowed civilizations to coordinate life with an almost uncanny precision. You lean against the courtyard wall, letting the warm stone absorb the last rays of the sun. Observing these scholars, you feel a sense of calm. Time is not merely counted here, it is understood, anticipated, and harmonized with life itself. The air is thick with quiet concentration, a living symphony of human curiosity and cosmic rhythm. As night falls, lanterns glow softly, illuminating the scrolls, instruments, and faces of those devoted to decoding the heavens. You watch the first stars appear, constellations that guided farmers, emperors, and astrologers alike. And in this quiet, deliberate world, you grasp the subtle brilliance of their approach. Time is both precise and poetic, a bridge between heaven and earth, knowledge and intuition. The soft glow of lanterns fades behind you as you journey westward into the vast and rugged landscapes of ancient Greece, where time takes on a philosophical and civic dimension. The air is salty from the nearby Mediterranean, carrying faint scents of olive groves, sun-warmed stone, and the sea breeze. You wander through a bustling agora, where merchants, philosophers, and citizens move in measured rhythms, their lives quietly orchestrated by the cycles of the sun and moon. You notice the Greeks' unique approach. They blend observation with reasoned inquiry, questioning not just how time passes, but why. Sundials and water clocks, called clepsydras, mark the hours in public spaces. Citizens glance at them to know when markets open, courts convene, and rituals begin. You watch an artisan adjusting the flow of water in a clepsydra, ensuring that each hour is measured with both precision and elegance. Oddly, these water clocks sometimes needed manual adjustment. Rain, evaporation, or imperfect construction meant hours could drift slightly. Yet this imperfection did not frustrate them. Instead, it fostered ingenuity and reflection. Scholars still argue whether Greeks prioritized civic organization or philosophical understanding in developing timekeeping, but the result is both practical and intellectually inspiring. You move toward the Acropolis, the sun casting warm shadows across columns and statues. Observing the movement of light on marble, priests and scholars could track the solar year, plan festivals, and maintain a rhythm for civic life. Time here is public, shared, and intertwined with both ritual and daily routine. You notice an oddly charming detail. Some Greeks aligned sundials with particular stars or landmarks, creating subtle cosmic references in ordinary life. The sun hitting a specific statue at noon could serve as a temporal marker, blending art,
science, and philosophy seamlessly. You smile at the poetic ingenuity. Who else could think to make statues themselves part of a clock? Meanwhile, astronomers study the stars, plotting movements with careful measurements. The Greek obsession with geometry and mathematics transforms celestial observation into predictive power. Eclipses, planetary retrogrades, and solstices are no longer mysterious omens, but puzzles to be solved, calculations to be refined, and tools to guide civic planning. As evening falls, you wander past a group of scholars debating under olive trees. Their voices are animated, discussing whether time is absolute or relative, cyclical or linear. Some argue it is measured in tangible hours. Others insist it is the human mind that perceives and divides it. Scholars still debate these theories even now, but standing here, you feel the profound curiosity that drives their inquiry. You rest on a stone bench, letting the Mediterranean breeze brush against your skin. Time in Greece is more than observation or ritual. It is reasoned, debated, and celebrated, a fusion of the physical and intellectual. You trace constellations like Orion and Ursa Major, familiar yet interpreted in new ways as guides for navigation, farming, and philosophical reflection. And as night deepens over the agora, you realize that in this civilization, time is a dialogue between humans and the cosmos, between observation and reasoning, between daily life and lofty inquiry. Even as centuries pass, their approach feels alive, a testament to the human desire to understand not only when, but why.
You leave the marble columns of Greece behind and travel east, across rugged mountains and flowing rivers, arriving in the sophisticated cities of ancient India. The air is warm and fragrant with sandalwood and spices, carrying faint sounds of temple bells and flowing water. Here, time is not only astronomical, but deeply spiritual, woven into the rhythm of daily life, ritual, and cosmic philosophy. You wander through a courtyard where scholars study the Surya Siddhantas, early astronomical texts that chart the movement of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. Observing their calculations, you realize the ancients predicted eclipses, solstices, and lunar phases centuries before mechanical clocks existed. These calculations are not just scientific, they are woven into philosophy, astrology, and ritual, shaping the lives of kings, priests, and commoners alike. Oddly, they also tracked time using water clocks and shadow instruments, similar in principle to Greeks and Babylonians, but infused with spiritual significance. Hours are not just divisions, they are muhurta, sacred intervals that guide daily prayers, rituals, and activities. You smile at the idea of dividing the day into spiritually auspicious segments, breakfast and meditation, work and reflection, all timed according to celestial rhythms. Scholars still debate how consistently these calculations were applied, but their precision is evident. You walk along a riverbank, watching farmers align their planting with lunar cycles, festivals, and the rising of specific constellations. The nakshatras, or lunar mansions, serve as both celestial markers and mythic narratives. Every star tells a story. Every story instructs human action. You realize that for them, astronomy and storytelling are inseparable. A quirky detail catches your attention. Some texts suggest rituals could adjust the perceived timing of cosmic events. Chanting, offerings, or meditation were believed to harmonize human activity with celestial patterns. You can almost hear a monk whispering, "If we move our hearts in time with the stars, perhaps the eclipse will be gentle."
Scholars still debate the practical versus symbolic purpose of these practices, but the poetic imagination is undeniable. The sun dips behind distant hills, casting elongated shadows across temple steps. You watch a priest align a gnomon to mark the equinox, while villagers pause in their daily chores to observe the subtle dance of light and shadow. Time is both measured and experienced, a living dialogue between earth, sky, and society. As stars emerge, you trace constellations like Orion and Canopus, familiar across civilizations, yet interpreted uniquely here. Their positions dictate festivals, agricultural planning, and even storytelling traditions. Time becomes a tapestry, connecting human activity to the eternal cosmos, guiding not only survival, but spiritual harmony. You sit quietly near the river, letting the hum of temple bells and distant chanting wash over you. Ancient Indian scholars measured time with the same rigor as Babylonians or Greeks, yet their system feels alive in a way entirely different, holistic, sacred, and intertwined with ethics, ritual, and cosmic philosophy. And as night settles fully, you understand a profound truth. Time is not just a sequence of hours or days, but a bridge connecting human existence to the universe, blending precision with spirituality, calculation with imagination. You feel the pulse of countless generations who observed the sky, guided their lives, and left wisdom that still resonates today.
From the sacred riverbanks of India, you travel northward into the towering snow-capped peaks of ancient Tibet, where timekeeping becomes intertwined with both astronomy and spiritual meditation. The air is thin, crisp, and carries the faint scent of incense from monasteries perched precariously on cliffs. You feel the quiet weight of centuries as monks chant in low, rhythmic tones, counting each syllable as if it were a heartbeat marking the passage of time. Here, time is not only celestial, it is internal, reflective, and sacred. Monks divide the day into segments for meditation, prayer, and study, aligned with lunar phases and solar positions. You notice a courtyard with a simple yet elegant sundial, its shadow marking not just hours, but periods for reflection and ritual. They track days, months, and years, but always in harmony with spiritual cycles, ensuring that human activity flows with cosmic order. Oddly, Tibetan timekeeping often blends astronomy with mythology. Certain stars, like Aldebaran or the Pleiades, dictate festivals, seasonal changes, and even pilgrimages. Scholars still debate whether these observations were primarily practical or symbolic, but it's clear that the system is meticulously observed. The sky itself becomes a living scripture, a map for both physical survival and spiritual alignment. You follow a young novice who carefully observes the rising sun over a monastery peak, marking the start of an auspicious day. Every sunrise and sunset is noted, not just for ritual, but also to coordinate agriculture, festivals, and communal life. The simplicity of these methods belie their accuracy. Centuries of observation condensed into daily practice. A curious detail emerges. Some monasteries use prayer wheels not just for spiritual purification, but to count repetitions and time cycles, blending human intention with celestial rhythm. You smile quietly, imagining centuries of monks spinning wheels to mark hours, days, and sacred moments, a mechanical meditation that also becomes a calendar. And as twilight deepens, you see distant yaks grazing along terraced fields, their movement subtly linked to seasonal cycles. Time here is not measured purely by clocks or stars, but by nature itself. Snowmelt,
River flow and animal behavior guide planting, herding, and survival. Scholars still debate how systematically these natural indicators were integrated into monastic schedules, but their influence is undeniable. You sit on a stone ledge, feeling the icy breeze and watching shadows stretch across the monastery courtyard. Time in Tibet is simultaneously measured, observed, and experienced internally. There's an almost meditative patience here. Hours and days are less about rushing and more about attuning to the cosmos. Stars begin to shimmer in the cold night sky, constellations familiar yet uniquely interpreted in Tibetan cosmology. You sense the quiet interplay between astronomy, spirituality, and daily life, a system where every celestial movement is mirrored in human rhythm. And as you close your eyes against the mountain chill, you realize a profound truth. In Tibet, time is not merely a measure, but a conscious practice, a bridge between human awareness and the vast universe. You feel that pulse, slow and steady, echoing through centuries of devoted observation, meditation, and cosmic harmony.
Descending from the lofty peaks of Tibet, you find yourself wandering into the fertile valleys and rolling hills of ancient Mesoamerica, where civilizations like the Maya and Aztec built time-keeping systems that astound even modern scholars. The air is warm and humid, filled with the scent of tropical flowers, freshly turned soil, and distant smoke from ceremonial fires. You feel the pulse of civilization in the rhythmic sounds of drums and chants echoing from stone pyramids. Here, time is both mathematical and mythological, intertwined with agriculture, religion, and politics. You stand before a towering stepped pyramid, its shadow carefully calculated to mark equinoxes and solstices. The Maya in particular developed intricate calendars, the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Ha'ab, a 365-day solar calendar. You watch as priests consult these cycles, aligning ceremonies with celestial events, ensuring harmony between humans, gods, and nature. Oddly, the Maya combined these calendars into a long count, creating a continuous chronological record that spans millennia. Scholars still debate how they achieved such precise astronomical calculations without telescopes, yet their predictions of eclipses and planetary alignments were remarkably accurate. You feel a thrill of awe, ancient knowledge crafted through observation, ingenuity, and careful record-keeping. You wander through a marketplace where traders align their schedules with ceremonial dates, planting seasons, and tribute collections. Everything depends on the cycle of the sun, moon, and Venus, which the Maya observed with astonishing precision. Oddly, they even accounted for irregularities, creating corrections that ensured their calendars stayed in sync with celestial movements over centuries. A quirky detail catches your eye. Some glyphs on stelae serve both as chronological markers and mythic storytelling devices, blending historical records with legends. You trace the carved symbols with your finger, feeling the rhythm of time inscribed in stone. Each mark carries meaning, precision, and narrative, a perfect synthesis of math and imagination. As the sun begins to dip behind the jungle canopy, shadows stretch across pyramids and plazas, marking hours with almost poetic elegance. Time here is tactile and visual. The shadow of a temple or pyramid signals sacred moments, guiding the rhythm of daily life and ritual. You notice priests observing Venus's position at dusk, knowing that its appearance will dictate ceremonies, warfare, and agricultural decisions. Scholars still argue about the full scope of Mayan astronomical knowledge, but standing here, you sense its brilliance. Time is not abstract. It is a living instrument guiding society, spirituality, and survival. You rest on a stone terrace, letting the humid breeze wash over you. The distant sound of ceremonial flutes and chanting fills the valley, echoing through centuries. Constellations emerge overhead, mapped and interpreted uniquely by these ancient observers. You marvel at the human capacity to link the heavens and earth, prediction and ritual, mathematics and myth. And as night blankets the jungle, you realize that Mesoamerican civilizations understood time in ways that were both incredibly practical and profoundly sacred. A dance of the cosmos etched in stone, observed in the sky, and woven into the very fabric of life.
Leaving the tropical jungles of Mesoamerica, you travel eastward across vast oceans, arriving on the shores of ancient Polynesia, where timekeeping is tied intimately to the stars, tides, and oral tradition. The warm salt breeze carries the scent of seaweed and coconut palms, and the rhythmic lapping of waves against canoes sets a meditative cadence as you wander along the sand. Here, time is navigational, practical, and deeply cultural. Polynesian voyagers relied on the positions of stars, the phases of the moon, and even the flight patterns of birds to guide their journeys across thousands of miles of open ocean. You watch a group of elders tracing constellations in the sand, teaching younger generations how to read the sky like a living map. It is both survival skill and sacred knowledge. Oddly, these navigators had no written records. Every calculation, every route, every timing was memorized and passed down orally. Scholars still argue whether their techniques were learned systematically or intuitively, but the results speak for themselves. Remarkable precision without telescopes or written logs. You can almost feel the tension and joy of voyaging under a star-strewn sky, knowing that life depended on accurate timing. You notice a young apprentice placing small markers of shells along the shore, each aligned with a specific star rising or setting at a particular season. These markers serve as temporary calendars, guiding planting, fishing, and ceremonial schedules. It's fascinating to see nature, memory, and astronomy intertwined so seamlessly. A quirky detail emerges. Polynesian navigators would sometimes predict tidal patterns based on lunar and solar observation, adjusting fishing or voyages accordingly. Imagine the stakes. One miscalculation could mean a lost canoe or a delayed harvest. Yet this system worked for centuries, passed down with exacting care. You follow the elders as they point to the southern constellations, the Southern Cross, Orion, and Canopus, noting their alignment with island clusters and seasonal winds. These celestial markers dictate when to plant yams, when to harvest fish, and when to conduct important rituals. Time here is practical, yet it is also woven into myth and storytelling, ensuring that each generation understands both the science and the soul of the cycles. As the sun dips below the horizon, the sea reflects a golden trail, and firelight flickers on the faces of those gathered in the village. You feel the rhythm of their lives sync with nature, not with clocks, but with stars, tides, and seasonal shifts. Scholars still debate the exact methods used to maintain such precision over centuries, but standing here, it feels effortless, intuitive, and awe-inspiring. You settle on a smooth stone at the water's edge, listening to the waves, chants, and whispers of the night. Time in Polynesia is observed, experienced, and memorized, a dance of human ingenuity harmonized with cosmic rhythm. And as stars emerge overhead, mirrored in the gentle waves, you realize that these islanders measured life not merely by hours or days, but by connection to the universe, to nature, and to each other. In this subtle mastery, time becomes both tool and story, guiding survival, community, and memory across generations. You leave the ocean breeze of Polynesia behind, traveling northwest to the arid deserts of ancient Egypt, where timekeeping becomes a mixture of practical necessity, divine observation, and monumental architecture. The sun is intense, and the scent of dry earth, limestone, and papyrus fills the air. You feel the relentless pulse of a civilization shaped by the life-giving Nile. Walking along the riverbank, you see farmers measuring the rising waters of the Nile. Their survival depends on timing. Planting and harvest must coincide with the inundation. Every measurement is precise, every observation vital. Ancient Egyptians didn't just track days, they tracked life itself. The annual flood dictated when crops could grow and when communities could thrive. Oddly, the Egyptians also used the heliacal rising of Sirius to mark the new year. This bright star's appearance just before dawn heralded the Nile flood. Scholars still debate whether they understood the underlying astronomy or whether observation alone sufficed. But the timing is undeniably precise. You marvel at their ingenuity, realizing that the stars literally guided the rhythm of life. You wander through a temple complex, noticing obelisks and shadow clocks marking hours by the movement of the sun. The larger the monument, the more precise the shadow's progression. Some even include intricate alignments that predict solstices and equinoxes. You can almost hear ancient priests adjusting their calculations, murmuring incantations to ensure celestial and human calendars remain synchronized. A quirky detail emerges. Egyptians sometimes used water clocks known as clepsydras. You imagine someone pouring water slowly, anxiously checking the hour, realizing that even in this brilliant civilization, human patience was literally measured drop by drop. Scholars still argue how widespread these were, or whether only the elite used them, but they reveal a clever blending of engineering and observation. As dusk falls, the pyramids cast long, sharp shadows over the desert sands. You follow the trajectory of the sun, noting the alignment with certain chambers deep inside these structures. Time, architecture, and ritual are inseparable here. The monuments themselves act as calendars, temples, and testaments to human ambition. You pause to watch villagers celebrating seasonal festivals, synchronized with solar and lunar cycles. The Nile, sky, and stars guide their movements, rituals, and livelihoods. Time is not abstract. It is woven into every activity, every crop, every prayer. Stars emerge one by one, constellations reflected in the still waters of the Nile. You feel a profound connection. Egyptians observed time to predict survival and celebrate life, blending practical necessity with cosmic wonder. Their calendars, monuments, and rituals ensure that human existence is synchronized with the eternal rhythms of nature. Leaning against the warm limestone, you inhale the desert air and realize that here, time is both measurement and meditation, a guiding force visible in the stars, the river, and the monumental structures that outlast centuries. From the sun-baked sands of Egypt, you journey westward to the rugged coasts of ancient Rome, where timekeeping is as much about civic order and social life as it is about celestial observation. The air carries the scent of olive groves, stone amphitheaters, and distant sea brine. Streets hum with the footsteps of citizens, merchants, and soldiers, all moving to an invisible rhythm dictated by calendars and clocks. You notice the Romans' pragmatic approach. They adopt sundials from the Greeks, refine them, and place them in public spaces. Citizens glance at these devices to know when markets open, when the forum convenes, and when festivals begin. Time is shared, observed, and regulated, ensuring that daily life flows in synchrony across a sprawling empire.
Oddly, Romans also relied on water clocks for indoor or nighttime measurements, particularly in judicial settings. Scholars still debate how accurate these devices were, but their use highlights a clever blend of engineering and practicality. You imagine a magistrate anxiously checking a clepsydra, aware that justice itself is constrained by the ticking of water. You wander past temples, colonnades, and civic buildings, marking months, festivals, and civic duties. The Roman calendar evolves over centuries. Lunar months adjusted with intercalary days, reforms under Julius Caesar creating the Julian calendar, aligning civic life with the solar year. It's fascinating to see how politics, religion, and astronomy intertwine. A quirky detail captures your attention. Certain months were named after gods, leaders, or festivals, embedding culture and memory into time itself. You smile at the thought that every casual mention of March or July carries echoes of history, power, and divine reverence. Scholars still debate how widely the populace understood these intricacies, but they clearly influenced civic consciousness. As the sun dips behind the Capitoline Hill, shadows stretch across the cobblestones. You see merchants timing their market activities, soldiers marching in cadence, and families planning religious observances. Time is practical, visible, and socially binding, ensuring that the vast Roman Empire functions in harmony. At night, the stars glimmer above the Tiber River. Roman astronomers chart constellations, aligning religious festivals and agricultural cycles with celestial movements. You feel the precision in their calculations, yet also the subtle artistry, the blending of science, religion, and daily life. Leaning on a marble fountain, you realize that in Rome, time is a tool, a guide, and a shared experience. It governs life from the simplest market exchange to the grandeur of imperial ceremonies. The Romans inherit and refine the wisdom of earlier civilizations, creating a system that balances practicality, culture, and cosmic observation. And as you watch lanterns flicker across the forum, you sense the heartbeat of an empire, measured, organized, and celebrated. A civilization living in deliberate harmony with both man-made order and the eternal sky.